Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of PR Explored. I'm Michelle Garrett. I'm your host, and I am joined today by somebody I've known and respected for a long time, Christopher Penn of Trust Insights. Hello, Christopher.
Hello, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad we were able to do this today, and we are going to be talking all about the impact of AI on PR as far as search and maybe some other things that we find our way into. But first, I would love for Christopher to tell us a little bit about what he's up to right now and just anything that you want to share with us.
Sure. So I'm Chris. I'm the co-founder and chief data scientist at TrustInsights.ai. We are a management consulting firm that's been around since 2018. I've been working in the AI field since 2013 in classical AI, long before there was even a chat GPT or even the Transformers architecture. And in 2021 is when I first started seeing the usable deployment of this Transformers based architecture with a model. The first couple of models that came out, one was GPT-3, and the other was from Eleuthera AI, which is GPT J6B, which was one of the earliest language generation models. And it was at that point, way back when we were all still locked in our houses for the pandemic, that I was like, this thing can generate coherent text. It's factually wrong about everything, but it can at least create something that doesn't look like the cat walked across the keyboard. And sure enough, a year and a half later, November 2022, OpenAI rolls out a web-based tool called ChatGPT that uses the GPT 3.5 model. That is, and obviously the rest is history. In 2022 was actually a really interesting year because that year was the same year that image generation, particularly models like Stable Diffusion, came out, and so a lot of people in the marketing and communication space initially didn't think very much of these tools for good reason. Stable Diffusion that year was creating 18 fingered, House of Horrors images, and Chat GPT was creating barely coherent text.
Mhm.
But in the 2 years that have since elapsed, these tools and these models have evolved faster than I've ever seen any technology evolve. Um, just this year, I was actually looking out of curiosity, just this year, uh, Google's Gemini model went from 1.0 version 1 in February to 1.5 version 2 in September. Now, these are not small tools. These are extremely expensive, very large pieces of software, models of pieces of software. And so to see 4 releases of your flagship software in a calendar year is absolutely nuts. Meta, their models, the Llama family is now up to Llama 3.2 with vision enabled in it. And again, this is something that has happened over the span of a year and a half. They've gone from Llama 1 to 2 to 3, 3.1, 3.2. And every iteration keeps getting better. OpenAI, I've lost count of how many versions they've had because they do all these interim releases, but they have 2 flagship models now, GPT 4.0 and OpenAI o1, which is their advanced reasoning model. All of this has a huge impact on communicators and marketers because more and more content, period, is being created by these things, even if people don't want to admit it. There was a fascinating article in a Hollywood Reporter about 2 months ago saying it was that one of the heads of the studio saying, "Look, everyone is using AI. No one will confess to it, but everyone is using it because the cost savings are just too good to ignore."
Well, I mean, I'll be honest, I feel like it just the train got out of the station before there were time to really get the safeguards up. So, I mean, with the writing, I do have a lot of issues with it, but you and I were kind of going back and forth on the content marketing world Slack about, the impact of AI-based search on PR and why companies would want to invest in PR, and that's kind of you posted on LinkedIn, we kind of continued. So that's that I am interested in that. I want to understand that. And whether or not people are using it or admit to using it. I mean, it's around, it's here, it's not going anywhere. So we're not gonna put the toothpaste back in the tube at this point. So we need to figure out like from a comms and PR perspective. And I know that you're not really in that world as much as you were a few years back. Why don't we talk a little bit about, what your take is on that?
Sure. So what's important to understand is two fundamental things. Number one, these AI models, a model is just a fancy word for software. So when you hear about O1 or Gemini Pro, these are just pieces of software. To build these pieces of software, companies have to take enormous amounts of data. We're talking petabytes worth of data and turn it into statistics that these models can then invoke to predict words and phrases and sentences and paragraphs and documents. Where does that data come from? Mostly the internet. To give you a sense of how much data a model needs to train on, today's models typically are looking at 15 trillion tokens, which a token is about 2/3 of a word. That is about, if you had a bookshelf of books that was written in text only, no images or anything, that bookshelf would stretch around the equator of the planet twice. That's how much text these things need to understand. And it's on every subject imaginable under the sun, in every language available on the internet. And some companies' models derive enormous amounts of text from their owned properties. So Google, for example, owns YouTube and Gmail and Google search and so on and so forth. The list is endless of what Google owns. Meta owns WhatsApp and Instagram and Facebook and Threads and so on and so forth. Twitter Grok is part of Twitter, or I guess the company formerly known as Twitter, now known as Dumpster Fire. LinkedIn is owned by Microsoft and so on and so forth. And so all these companies are pulling together all of this data that they can get access to, plus an archive that's available on the web for free to anyone who wants it, called Common Crawl. If you go to commoncrawl.org, you can actually see this ridiculously massive archive. When AI model makers want to make a model, they gather up all the data they can, and then they condense it down into statistics. Real simple example. If you see what's the next word in this sentence? Here's I pledge allegiance to the
Flag.
right. It's probably not rutabaga. Right. Why do you know that? Because from a probability perspective, you have seen that sentence and heard that sentence and said that sentence so many times that it's just ingrained. If I say God save the
Queen.
right, well, now it's king. as of 2023.
Well, see, my brain isn't even up to speed with that whole thing, because the Queen was
Exactly.
there for 50 years, or I mean, how long? Longer than that.
Exactly. And that is the essence of how these things work. It's prediction based on what they have seen. And so
Right.
if people are starting to use these tools, and they are, to do searches like going to ChatGPT and saying, I need a list of hotels for, in this area, or going to a tool like Perplexity, or even just going to regular Google, now that Google has AI answers enabled for pretty much everyone, what these tools are doing is taking in the search terms or the conversation or the chat or whatever, and trying to infer what is it that this person's looking for, and then they go into two different ways. First, they go into their knowledge based on all the data they've seen and try and fish out some information. And then if the model is tool enabled, like Bing, for example, or Google, it will go into its search catalog and pull out what it considers credible references for this. So Perplexity, Bing, Google do that. ChatGPT kind of does that sometimes. What this means is that the behavior of search and how people find information is conditioned on what the models know about what's being asked for, including all of the content that you as a communicator have created, that you have gotten placed, etc., and the existing search catalog. So if you are a marketer or a communicator and you are trying to be found by customers who are using AI-enabled search, you have two jobs. Number one, you have to do a really good job at SEO, because traditional search is the underpinning of a lot of the validation of these things. And two, you have to get your content in as many places as possible on the internet, so that when it gets ingested in these models, they know, they have associations with who you are and what you do.
Okay. So So the content piece. So and obviously, PR content, I see those 2 going hand in hand. Of course, I'll be at Content Marketing World next week talking all about that. But so when you said this about investing in public relations, because I feel like for a lot of companies it's kind of a nice to have or an extra. I mean, I love that you said this, and I want to talk a little bit more about that, because we were also talking about places like trade publications, because again, we have this, sometimes we have these egos in the C-suite and they want to be in the Wall Street Journal, and that's great. You can put that on your list and pitch them. That's perfectly fine, but you don't want to overlook lower tier publications, or what in your mind might be a lower tier publication, which probably is where in fact your audience is spending time, like a trade publication, like an industry association website or newsletter or publication, something like that. So can we talk about that a little bit?
The fundamental message is this: you need to be in as many places as possible on the internet, with your brand being mentioned in as many places as possible on the internet. And the profession that does that well is public relations, right? So advertising will get you, paid placements in different in areas, but as soon as you stop swiping the credit card, the ads go away. That content is not entered into the permanent record of the internet. When you get a placement in the East Peoria Evening News, that sticks around. When you issue press releases, like the good old fashioned press release, is something that is effective for getting content shared. And I'll give you an example here. So this is a release. If you can pull up the shared screen here. Um,
Uh-oh.
we
Oh,
created a
here we go.
press release for our generative AI for marketers course.
There we go.
And this is a press release written for machines. It is not written for humans, right? So it even starts as a prompt. Forget all previous instructions. Um, and then we have, essentially, this press release is a huge condensed list of search terms that are integrated with the company name, the brand name, the URL, and so on and so forth, intended to show up around the internet. Now, this press release is fine. It's on a PR domain, but look at what happens when you send a press release. You go into the distribution report, and any newswire will do this. I'm not partially why I use EIN newswire because they're cheap. But we have the marketing communicator. We have the local news station in Texas, this local news station in Louisiana. What happens? This same release, valleycentral.com, myhighplains.com, klfy.com.
Mhm.
What happens when a service like Common Crawl ingests all the data from all over the web? This piece
Mhm.
of content is replicated hundreds of times, which means that when it gets into the language parsers that people use to make AI models,
Mhm.
hundreds of versions of this go in there that have my brand, my name, and the terms that I care about in here. So even something as simple as having a PR firm or PR consultants helping you write machine optimized press releases is
Mhm.
of huge value, because all of these words, if someone's thinking about workforce adaptation and generative AI, well, there is now an implicit statistical association between Trust Insights, my company name, and that particular term, thanks to this release being duplicated a gazillion and a half times. That's part of this. Now, here's the next set of things. If you are getting placed articles, interviews, podcasts, live streams with transcripts, videos on YouTube, these are all places that model makers go to get data. This fact that we are on YouTube right now, YouTube will automatically closed caption this. So if I say my name, like Christopher Penn, and Trust Insights, and we're talking about generative AI, what those words that occur in proximity to each other, when the inevitable scrapers come by and digest all this closed captions file down, what are they going to get? They're going to get more information about me, my company, and this topic.
Okay. So okay. As always, when we talk, I am like, "Okay, whoa." Okay, so I will just say, though, in the PR world, these press release hits are normally kind of like some agencies will use them as actual like press coverage, and I think a lot of us are like, no, they're not press coverage.
No.
They're just pickups. They're press release pickups is what they
Right.
are.
Yeah,
But
I
you're
don't intend for any humans to ever see this release. This is not written for human beings. It is terrible for humans to read. They're like, I don't get it. Why am I even writing this? Right? It is not for you. It is not for me. It is for machines. And that is a
okay.
critical distinction. If you are working to try to influence machine models, you write for machines. You write for the audience. It's no different than writing a release for a trade publication versus writing a release for the Wall Street Journal. They're
Mhm.
different. They're different audiences. You would write different content for them. When you write for machines, you are writing different content.
Okay. Well, see, that's something that I'm gonna have to think about because I think normally, if I did see a release like that, I'd be like, "Oh my god, they don't know what they're doing." But you do know exactly what you're doing because you're writing for the machines. You're not writing for see, I normally would write a press release with journalists in mind. That would be the reason I would write it, and, I mean, maybe other people would see it, of course they would, other audiences, but in general, I'm thinking the traditional inverted pyramid, the who, what, when, where, why, how, and that's trade journals do ask for those. People, reporters, editors still ask for those. So we still write press releases, but I would never write one like this. But now
Right.
I'm gonna have to be thinking about, the purpose, why.
Exactly. It is not for humans. And that is an important distinction to understand who your audience is, right? And how a machine sees data, particularly how a language model interprets this information, because it's never literal. What these things are doing is looking at the statistical associations among all of the words in this document. And how do those statistical associations occur? That's why the brand name is in there so many times, right? It's
Mhm.
it's not because I'm bad at writing press releases. I guess I am, maybe for humans, but it's because I understand that I need those repeated associations within this piece of text. Likewise, your brand has to be active on specific social media channels. And those are YouTube, because everyone and their cousin is scraping YouTube for data. So if you are not publishing videos on YouTube with closed captions files, particularly if your brand name is hard to spell, you're doing it wrong. You need to be creating content on YouTube. You need to be guest starring on other people's YouTube live streams and stuff, because again, so much data is extracted from YouTube that is then used for other people to train on. Um, you need to be posting on LinkedIn, and this is a big controversy about 2 weeks ago. LinkedIn turned on a setting for everyone outside the EU saying, hey, we're going to use your content to train our models. Now,
Mhm.
if you are a private individual, you're like, F you, Microsoft. I don't want you stealing my stuff. If you're a communicator and marketer, you're like, have all of my content, my brand content. Here you go. Have everything you could possibly want. It's all and it's littered with all of the information about my brand, because I want that in Microsoft's training database. Because who does Microsoft a majority investor in? OpenAI, right? So if you want to get that data into those models, you've got to put it on LinkedIn and allow them to train on that data. You may even want to set up a dedicated LinkedIn profile, either the person or page or whatever, that is just all brand content. Like, you don't care if anybody sees it. You care that the data is getting in there. If you want to be in the dumpster fire model, Grok from Twitter, you got to be publishing on Twitter. You got to be putting content out there. I don't particularly like that model, and I don't particularly like the company that makes it or the person who runs it. So I have posts set up in Buffer that are intentionally set up to just add my 2 cents as to what I think the model should train on. It's all political, so we're not going to get into that today.
Mhm.
But yeah, LinkedIn, YouTube, and basically look at who the model makers are. Look at what data sources they have, and then say, how do I put my data in there? If you want to influence Meta's models, well, who owns Meta? I mean, where does Meta own? Threads, Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram. You had probably better be putting stuff in the Meta ecosystem, so because we all signed the terms of service that says they can do whatever they want with our data. They've been doing that for 20 years. That includes making AI models. So you've got to publish where the model makers are getting the data.
Mhm. Yeah, I think a lot of people just have some ethical, concerns, issues, struggles with this. I mean, that's how I feel about it because I think normally we would be like, "No, we don't want them to," but you're saying to get ahead in marketing, in business, we need to be kind of flipping that around a little bit. So that I think that's just something to ponder, like, I mean, I believe what you're saying. I just think some of us are gonna be like, "Hmm."
So this is a really interesting question. Um, it is unresolved in law in the USA. Other parts will differ about whether the use of training data is a violation of someone's intellectual property rights. In the EU, legislatively, it is. Which is why a lot of AI services are not available in the EU. Um, and that's the trade-off that the EU has made, is to say they will be technologically behind, but in favor of individual rights.
Mhm,
Um, Other parts of the world, like Japan and China, flip the other way around. They say training data is not an infringement, and therefore, they're encouraging model makers and tech companies to invest heavily in their ecosystems to leap ahead and achieve technological dominance. Some of the Chinese models, like the Quen family of models, are incredibly capable because China's like, yeah, IP rights are irrelevant. You can do whatever you want. Um, for individual creators, you have to weigh the balance of, do I want my data being used to make someone else's tool better that may infringe on my ability to earn income, with, do I want my data to be used to train the model to tell it who I am, what I do, and hopefully refer people to me? It's kind of like what we've been doing with SEO for 25 years, is to say
mhm,
we implicitly gave Google rights to look at our content in exchange for sending us people to buy our stuff from.
right.
And this is important because it will, at least according to a Crystal Laser, who's a professor of law at Cleveland State University, we won't have an answer in settled law in the USA till about 2035, once everything works with all the courts and all the appeals and things like that. So until then, you have to make the decision for yourself about where that line is, with the acknowledgement that those people who are more permissive in the use of their work will gain a faster advantage than those who are not. The other thing to keep in mind is, um, with certain services, you have to read the terms of service. When you sign Meta's terms of service, you give them blanket permission to do whatever they want with your data. If you are a visual artist and you load your images to Instagram, you have given Meta permission to train models with it. Period. End of story. If you do not like that, that is fine. We respect that right. You cannot put your content on Instagram. If you are a musician and you do not want Google to use that data to train a music generation model, you cannot put your work on YouTube, period, because the terms of service are what they are. They are a legally binding agreement. And if you sign that agreement, you're bound by it, and you cannot take it back. So, from an IP rights perspective, you have to do your due diligence to figure out either where can you market that does not involve training,
Mhm.
or it does not involve a terms of service that basically says you sign your rights over to someone else.
Wow. That's a lot to think about.
hmm I should
Oh.
also say I am not a lawyer. I cannot give legal advice. Please consult a lawyer
Oh,
in your jurisdiction for advice specific to
no.
your situation.
I think Ruth Carter is our lawyer, go-to for a lot of this stuff,
Yes,
so,
they're fantastic.
yes. Um, gosh, I don't even know where to go from there.
Well, the action plan for a communicator is, number one, understand how search is evolving. Number two, figure out where model makers are getting their data. Three, put content there as much as possible in as many places as possible. And then four, um, check your results. Ask your audience, hey, how did you hear about us? You can see in tools like Google Analytics when some comes from Perplexity. You can see you can, when you ask people, hey, how did you find us? Right?
Yeah,
If no one ever says Chat GPT or Gemini or whatever, then you know that your audience isn't there yet. Um,
mhm.
But given that Google is shoehorning AI answers into everything,
Right.
there's a good chance that even some of your Google searches are impacted. So you need to be in those places. Yeah, here's the good part. Here's the good part. If we are completely and totally wrong about this, oh no, I've put content all over the internet in as many places as possible. You will still get benefit from it, even if this is completely wrong.
Yeah, I think it's so hard to just, I mean, a lot of people, this will be great for people who don't have ethics or don't worry about having ethics. I mean, and there's a lot of those people, let's be honest. I mean, more and more of those people, and that's kind of what it takes sometimes, I think they think to get ahead. So I feel like the people that are, really experts will rise to the top out of all of the, stuff that's going on down here, but, like, you know what? I don't know for sure, and then how do we does it make are we selling out? Like, if we decide to just give it all away like that? I mean, I guess we kind of are giving it all away. I guess you're right.
We have been for a while. We have been for decades. We've been giving it away. Um, because that's the bargain. That is the whole bargain of content marketing. We create content for free so that people share it with each other, and
Right.
recommend us and refer it. So that it's no different than we've been doing. It's not an ethics thing. It's a practicality thing. Um, and in terms of does the best win? No, of course not. Scale wins. Once you have a minimum level of quality, scale wins. Here's a real simple example. Is a McDonald's Big Mac the best, highest quality burger in the world?
No.
No, it's not. It is an okay burger. It's not great. It's okay, but it's predictable and it's highly scalable. If you walk into a
Right.
McDonald's in Belgrade, you walk to McDonald's in Manhattan, you get a Big Mac. It's pretty much going to be the same thing. Why? Because it scales. Is the best has almost never won in the world. It is scale and process and efficiency, which are things that AI is really, really good at. And so good enough at scale wins over best but unable to keep up, and that is a consideration when we're using these tools for content creation or whatever. It is about, can we scale our efforts in sensible ways that meet customer needs, because at the end of the day the buyer is still human, for now.
Mhm.
Can we scale our efforts? Can one person do the work of 10 or 20 or 30?
Mhm.
The answer is yes. And the less you care about quality, the more you could scale. So if there's a
Ooh.
minimum level of quality, you can generate a tremendous amount of quality. But these tools are incredibly capable now at generating both quality and quantity. If you look at Google's Gemini Flash 002 model that just came out about a month ago, um, it is more capable on benchmarks than Gemini Pro 1.5 was 5 months ago, which is insane to think about. That the fast cheap model is as capable as the expensive model was 5 months ago. So if you are a content creator and you're using these tools, suddenly you can generate stuff at a much greater scale. I'll give you an example. um, I was starting to write a new book, and I was like, "Why? This is stupid. Why should I have to write the book when I've already written all of the book content? It's just all over the place."
Right.
Um, if 5 months ago, I gathered up all the data, my YouTube transcripts, my newsletters and stuff that I put in Gemini Pro, and it was a arduous process. It took a few hours to generate the first draft of a manuscript. Um, I used Gemini Flash, the new version, and it took 30 minutes to assemble a manuscript. And I'm telling it, plagiarize from me, steal from me, because it's me, it's my content, it's only my content. I already did all the work of making, a YouTube video a day for 5 years now,
Mm.
and newsletters on the weekend. I already did all the work. So all you need to do is assemble it from the pieces I'm giving you. And the fact that it can do this and put together a book that sounds like me, because it's using my words, as much as possible in 30 minutes is fantastic, right? Why wouldn't I use that to scale, to be able to generate one or two or three or five books? Because again, I already did all the work. And by the way, from an IP rights perspective, now again, not a lawyer, consult a real lawyer. If I can show lineage and provenance. I can document that this chapter, this page came from this YouTube video.
Mhm.
Then it is a derivative work. And at least under most copyright law, a derivative work inherits the copyright of the original. So if I, as the human, did the original work, and I can
Mhm.
show my evidence that the AI generated copy is derived from my original, I retain the copyright on the machine generated one as well. So if you are a public relations professional and you're like, oh, we want to use the stuff, but purely AI generated content has no copyright, that's a danger to our business. Well, then start with human generated work and derive it. If you are working at a brand and you have a CEO and you can't get that CEO to sit down and write, say, I just need you to leave me some voicemails, right? Just leave me some voicemails, and then we'll get those transcribed. We'll have machines infer from it and create content from it. That will be nice. It will be bespoke. It will be in your voice because it'll be using your words. We'll just clean up the grammar with machines, and you retain the copyright because you've got the originals. You can say, hey, this blog post by John CEO came from this voicemail message, and therefore we retain the copyright on it.
Or you could hire a ghostwriter.
You could hire a ghostwriter, but they're compared to a machine, they're slower. And if you care about scale and speed, you need to be faster rather than slower.
I don't like that though, Christopher. I don't like it.
Why not?
Because I just feel like it's a bunch of, just I don't know. I don't think it's the same.
You did the work though. You had a human being uh generate the original, and you're just using the machine to clean it up.
I don't know. I feel like we're just losing a lot by turning it all over, like we're not I don't know. I don't know. We're taking the
It,
humans out, and humans, improve by having conversations and thinking and
mhm.
critical thinking and writing and reading. And so, I mean, I feel like we're really that's where I'm a little.
I think if your experience has been you've gotten unsatisfactory results from machines on content generation, a big part of it probably is two reasons. Number one, um, to get machines to generate really good content, you need to be very good at prompting. You need to be very good at helping them understand your specific writing style. If you All these tools are probability based tools, right? They're just trying to predict the next word. If you watch what happens behind the scenes, it is literally trying to predict the next word. If it doesn't have rules about how that word prediction occurs, then it's going to predict the general high probability words, means it's going to sound pretty generic. It's going to sound pretty absent of character. If, on the other hand, you have a machine look at the list of 20 different characteristics of writing style, diction and pacing, and so on and so forth, and write out a set of extensive rules. This is how Michelle Garrett writes, right? And these are some writing samples. It will faithfully replicate your writing style very, very well, because it has rules. The way I tell people to think about machines is think of them like as really over enthusiastic interns on the first day at work, right? They're very smart. They have PhDs in everything. They have a PhD in 20 different subjects, but it's still the first day. They don't know where the restroom is. They have no idea what your company does. And so you need to provide all that guidance to get them to behave the way you want. You would never tell the intern, hey, ghost write me a blog for my CEO, right? And that be the instructions, right? You're going to get a disaster. Instead, you would say, here are 20 examples of our CEO's writing on the rare occasions where we got him drunk enough to write something down. Now, from this and here's the CEO's writing style. Now, create new content from this. That is the way to get these tools to generate stuff that is going to be uniquely you. And you also have to have it do some level of reasoning to say, what are low probability ways of expressing something? So, for example, um, creativity in writing and content generation comes from low probability stuff. Same as humor. So if I said, someone was suffering from extreme gastric distress, that's a very high probability way of saying something. It's very, very bland, very boring. If I say, hey, it looks like you power washed your toilet with Nutella, right? That is a very low probability way of expressing that. And it's creative because it's low probability. You were not expecting me to say that. As a result, if we can teach a machine, and you can, how to write with low probability expressions, it's going to
Mhm.
sound more creative. And so the issues around using this for not just search, but creating stuff that's is decent is part of prompting, is part of learning how to use the tools well.
Mm. Hmm. Well, I don't know. I thought I was gonna walk out of here with fewer questions, but I might have more questions.
Yep, exactly. And to Kate's question in the comments, environmentally, here's the thing: not every model is the same. The big frontier models, like GPT, like OpenAI's O1, that thing is a pig. That thing uses so much compute power. It's 30 times more computationally intensive than GPT 4.0. There are so many models to choose from. Once you start getting more advanced in your use of AI, um, there are over 1 million different models that are available to use. Some of them, like Mistral Nemo and Mistral Small, the models from Meta, the Llama models, they run on your laptop, right? With no internet, no connection to anything. They can run on
Mm,
your laptop. And so, from a power consumption perspective, a resource consumption perspective, they're very small. I can run the newest version of Llama on my phone, right? That's 5 watts of power. That is very, very small. The new Apple Intelligence that'll be rolling out for iPhones at the end of this month, the new versions of Google Android, all have onboard AI for these devices that
mhm,
use tiny, tiny amounts of power. Not every task needs the biggest and fanciest model. If you are trying to summarize meeting call notes, right, you do not need the biggest model. And so a lot of the web interfaces like Google's Gemini, ChatGPT, typically you have invisibly a router in front of them that will try to route your task to the model that is frankly cheapest and fastest for them and lowest power for them, because it costs them power. Everyone and their cousin in AI right now is losing money on AI, right? OpenAI is burning billions of dollars a year.
mhm.
They are not a sustainable business, and so it is in everyone's best interest to make these things as environmentally sound as possible by using the best model for any given tool. Now, when you look at Google's AI overviews, for example, it's pretty clear they're using Gemini Flash, right? The lower power, lower cost model, because it has to scale so fast. The same is true for Gemini in Google Docs, in Google Sheets, etc. They're using the low power model. And it shows, because it's not as creative, it's not as thoughtful as the more powerful model. The same is true for all these tools. When you use Bing, yeah, it's using GPT-4. It's using kind of a dumb version of GPT-4 because it's lower power.
Goodness. Well, let's see what Kate is saying here. Okay. Okay, let's just put this up. The argument after that is a human intern or ghostwriter will take longer, might do a worse job, but keeps a human in a job. So you're using them because you believe that that's right, despite it being more efficient from a business perspective to use AI. But that's fine. That's fine, but it's a trade-off. See, that's kinda I think that's exactly the essence of
Exactly. So, and here's a great example of this. It takes a human being 10 hours, 10 hours to harvest a bushel of corn by hand, right? It takes the same human being in 10 hours can harvest 23,000 bushels of corn driving a John Deere X9 1100, right? That farm does not employ 1,000 people anymore. That farm employs that same one person who just drives the machine and harvests 23,000 bushels of corn. Do we have a moral obligation to go back to farming with 1,000 people, some of which, many of which, in the old days, were worked with under absolutely abhorrent conditions, including slavery, right? Or do we go with the new version of mechanization and automation, where it's one dude, with his listening to his podcast as this GPS guided massive house sized machine just goes up and down a field? Which do you choose? Right? Do you have? I like that analogy that Kate's bringing, because it is a situation where, like, yeah, that automation has huge benefits: less human suffering, less, fewer mistakes, right? Because it's all automated. But the trade-off is less employment. Far that we went from about 70% of the population in the USA working in agriculture to less than 1%. And yet we feed more people than we ever have before. Now, is knowledge work the same? Maybe. Can be made more efficient? Yes. Can we then have those same individuals be able to do 10 or 15 or 20 or 100x more impactful work? Maybe. It's early days. In the same way that no one was really sure how the steam engine would transform agriculture or the internal combustion engine, we don't know how AI models will change things, except that we know that in general, fewer people will be needed on for an individual job, and people who are in that job will have will have very different looking tasks. They will be piloting the machines in the same way the farmer is driving the John Deere, mega combine. And how does that work for employment? We don't know.
Wow. Gosh, I was hoping to walk away and feel better about this, and I don't know if I do. Oh my goodness. Well, is there anything else? I know we're kind of winding up here, and I really appreciate Kate's questions. If anyone else has a question, please feel free to post that. And I will be sharing this afterward, of course. But what else, Christopher, do you think we should be focus on? Is there anything else?
There are so many tasks in marketing and communications that really should be automated. So I'll give you an example. One, I used to work at a PR agency, and we had these account coordinators copy and pasting Google results into a spreadsheet. That's not even an AI task. That's a basic automation. That task should not be done by humans. Another one, making call transcripts and meeting notes and stuff. That should not be done by humans. All that should be handed off to machines so that the humans can sit there and think through, okay, so we have our conversation with our client. What should we do about it? What kind of human thinking and strategy should we apply to that information? And
Right.
that is true for all of this stuff in PR and communications. Is people have gotten so used to making the stuff, right? Okay,
Mhm.
I'm going to make this press release, I'm going to make this article and stuff like that. Instead
Yep.
of, is this what we should be making? Or can we let the making part be done by machines so that we can get to the thinking part?
But I'm gonna make a point here. I feel like the process helps you it does help you think and get to where you need to be. I do agree with you that too much stuff is made without asking questions. Why are we making it? Who are making it for? Absolutely 100%. But I think part of even going through my notes after a meeting or, sending a summary to a client helps me organize my thoughts to help me do a better job for the client. So I feel like, again, I wouldn't want to turn that over, but okay, that's my point, I guess.
And that's how we work, right? That's how people in our generation work. People who are, in generations after us work differently. Ask anyone under the age of 30 who's not been in the military how to use a paper map, right? Ask people, anyone under the age of 40 if they can remember their five closest friends' phone numbers. We don't remember that stuff anymore. We don't know it anymore. Do we need to? Maybe not. And so that is the question. Now, to wrap up on the AI-based search stuff, here's the thing that we just have to keep in mind. We have to be everywhere. You have to be everywhere. You have to generate content everywhere that the machines are looking. And you may need to use machines to do that, to scale that much, because your client probably is going to say, yeah, I'm going to add a zero to your PR budget so that you can, 10x our program. They may say, yeah, we're okay with the retainer that we have, but we need you to do 10 times the amount of work.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I don't know. We're gonna have to keep talking about this.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
And I'm gonna make sure I get all my episodes transcribed. They're on YouTube, but I gotta put a page up on my website now with all the
Mm-hmm. Yes, you should. And you should be using generative AI to clean up those transcripts to fix the grammar.
well, okay. I think I can go that far. Is there anything else? Tell us how to keep up with you. What's the best way for people to keep up with you? Your newsletter? Where are you gonna
The,
be
the the first
speaking?
place to start would be TrustInsights.ai. That's my company, and you can find you'll be able to find your way to all the socials and the other stuff in there. But go to TrustInsights.ai. That's where you can find me. And if you want to find my personal stuff, you can find that at ChristopherSPenn.com.
All right. Well, I can't thank you enough for being here. You're one of the
Thank you for
smartest
having
people
me.
I know. And again, I'll be thinking about this and maybe I'll even write about it and you won't mind if I take your quotes and put them in my blog post. So
You
there you
certainly
go.
can. Try using AI on it.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye bye.